Welcome to the HiRSE-Seminar series on research software engineering in Helmholtz and beyond.
Finding my unmute button. There we go. Thanks, Claire. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks everybody for being here. As Claire mentioned in that introduction, I'm Toby Hodges, pronouns he, him, his, and I'm here to talk to you today about how the Carpentries supports what I like to call community-driven training, and I guess with a focus on how that can enable open and reproducible research. First up, a disclaimer. I had to reschedule this talk that was originally scheduled for a couple of weeks ago due to childcare emergencies, thinking that things would probably be better 2 weeks later. And I regret to inform you that things are not really better 2 weeks later. And I've got 2 kids in the other room who hopefully are going to keep being entertained by the Disney movie that they're watching currently and the pizza that they're eating. But there may be interruptions, and it's kind of a stressful time for me. So bear with me if things don't run as smoothly as I would have liked them to in this seminar. Thanks again. So I want to start with some context, I suppose, to tell you about who I am and how I came to be here talking to you about this today. I've got a background in biochemistry and bioinformatics. I completed a bachelor's at the University of Manchester in the UK, and then a master's and a PhD at the University of York. Instead of any publications and high quality research, the main outcome of that PhD that I did was a strong sense for myself that traditional academic research didn't want me, and the feeling was mutual. So nevertheless, the research environment at the University of York was pretty great, and I really enjoyed working with academics, even if I knew that I didn't want to carry on being one myself. I was convinced to stick around for a while as a core facility bioinformatician, and in that role, it mostly involved performing data analysis for other research projects going on in that biology department, but also included occasional opportunities to teach principally Python programming. And in 2015, I was lucky enough to be given an opportunity to move over to Germany and join the European Molecular Biology Laboratory here in Heidelberg as a community manager for something called the BioIT project there, which is a community building and community management project for bioinformaticians and computational biologists at that research institute. Taking that job meant moving to Heidelberg, where I still live. And it also meant getting to work with lots of amazing people. One of those people that I got to work with at EMBL introduced me to software carpentry, inviting me to teach Python at a workshop that he was organizing there. And I had a great time doing that, gradually got more and more involved in the Carpentries community. And then in summer 2020, I left EMBL to take up a role in the core team. I've taken on kind of additional responsibility, I guess, to lead the curriculum team within that core team. And the work of the curriculum team is to facilitate all of the community's work around development and maintenance of lessons. Don't worry if most of this doesn't mean anything to you yet. Hopefully by the end of the talk, it's going to. I've also included at the bottom here several logos for other projects and communities that I've been involved in, either that I am currently involved in or that I have been in the past. And I particularly want to highlight this one, OLS, which was formerly Open Life Science. That provides a really outstanding program of training and mentoring in open leadership. So kind of leadership skills that can complement the kinds of open and reproducible research skills that I'm going to be talking about the Carpentries providing here. So I strongly recommend that you check out that project as well and consider getting involved. It's run by some amazing people, and they've built a fantastic community around that project too. So give you a heads up about what I'm going to be talking about in the rest of this seminar. I'll tell you little bit about the Carpentries that the organization that I work for, about the workshops that we deliver, some opportunities for lesson development within the community, and I'm going to be trying to sprinkle throughout a discussion of the benefits to research software engineers of getting involved in these kinds of things. So the Carpentries is a community-led organization that teaches what we consider to be essential software and data skills that enable open and reproducible research. I emphasize the words community here because there's really two overlapping but distinct concepts of what the Carpentries is. There's the organization, which is typically the core team of staff that I'm part of, who are paid kind of staff members who support and facilitate the work of the community. And then there's that community of volunteers, largely, who are spread all over the world. And that community really is the much more important aspect, I think, and I'm going to go on to talk about why. So the organization, the Carpentries, is a fiscally sponsored non-profit organization. We're on our way to becoming fully independent, and we're based in California in the US, but our core team has members spread all over the world. As an organization and as a non-profit organization, we've got all of those things like a vision and a mission statement, a published set of core values, a strategic plan, a budget, and all of that other stuff that comes along with being a legal entity that handles day-to-day operations of a community like this. The Carpentries community, however, is a much, much larger group of people. As I said, they're mostly volunteering their time, and they work together towards the goals that the organization kind of tries to capture in the mission statement that I mentioned. And they also work together to create and sustain a really welcoming and inclusive and supportive culture. It's that community that really makes me want to go to work every morning. And it's fair to say that the organization really wouldn't exist without them. And in the rest of this talk, really, I'm going to be trying to describe the different ways in which our community members do this, or at least some of the different ways in which our community members do this. And by the end, I hope to give you some impression of the impact that they've had. For now, suffice to say that we strive to be inclusive and open in everything that we do. And we aim to maintain what we call a growth mindset in all of our activities. So learning as we go and remaining receptive to feedback and ideas for how we can further improve. The Carpentries is probably best known as an umbrella organization for what we call our 3 lesson programs. That's data carpentry, library carpentry, and software carpentry. Each of these takes a common approach to teaching computational skills and concepts, but to similar but distinct target audiences. Data carpentry has a focus on handling and organization of research data, library carpentry on skills for efficient interrogation, curation, and publication of information, and software carpentry on what we call good enough software engineering practices for researchers to adopt that can help them achieve more in less time. And hopefully, as I'm describing that, you are able already to see how training in these areas could be relevant to communities that are learning about research software engineering. I also want to mention at this point that all of the Carpentries lessons are open source, hosted on GitHub and published under a permissive license, the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 or CC BY license, as it's called for short, and maintained by our community. I don't know if there are any Carpentries lesson maintainers in the audience for the talk, but if there are, then thank you very much for what you do and the impact that you make on the community. The curricula of those lesson programs then are taught by our community in workshops all over the world. I like showing this figure. It shows the locations where workshops have taken place across the world. The countries are filled in with any color other than gray. That means that at least one workshop has taken place in that country. And then the color scale indicates how many workshops have taken place in those countries. And then you've got the circles within them that represent specific locations within the countries where workshops have taken place. The larger the size of the circle, the more workshops that have taken place there. And so you start to see the clusters of where workshops have taken place, but also the spread, hopefully, that you can see all over the world. So in total, this is more than 4,000 workshops since 2012. So that's tens of thousands of learners who've attended those workshops and benefited from them across all 7 continents. We've even run workshops in Antarctica, which is always nice to say. Workshops take place both in person and online, and teach foundational skills and concepts to help researchers build their computational skills. One of the effects that we hope that this has is to build capacity for computational research within local communities, which can help research software engineers do their job and communicate more effectively with their colleagues, because their colleagues are developing at least some kind of basic understanding of computational research methods. The workshops then are taught by certified instructors that have been trained and certified by the Carpentries. They attend a short instructor training event, and then they complete some tasks afterwards that we refer to as a checkout process to complete the complete obtaining that certificate. I don't know if there are any Carpentries instructors in the audience. If there are, then give us a wave in the chat. Tell us perhaps how long you've been an instructor for. And as I said to the maintainers before as well, thank you very much for everything that you do in the community. This instructor training fundamentally changed my approach to teaching when I took it back in 2015. It gave me a lot more confidence in what I was doing as a teacher, as an instructor, and it really filled me with a sense that the time that I was spending on that wasn't being wasted, because I could be much more confident that I was being effective, I guess, in the way that I was delivering that information to people. And I've really been surprised to discover how many other situations there are where the principles and the concepts that are covered in that instructor training have been relevant. So that includes things like writing documentation, right the way through to things like parenting. There's a lot of stuff that I picked up in just that 2 days of instructor training that's really stuck with me. I know that there are a lot of research software engineers out there who teach either formally or informally, perhaps teaching classes or workshops like these, but sometimes as well explaining things, teaching new skills to their colleagues in a much more informal manner. If you've got anything like that involved in your role, then I really strongly recommend this instructor training to you. It's a great way to become more effective at communication and at teaching new skills to people. So the instructor training, the way that we do this really is by trying to promote effective teaching methods based on what research in educational psychology has shown works most effectively to communicate information to people and to help them learn new skills. So the curriculum looks at how learning works, how the human brain actually learns new information and builds new skills, cognitive skills at least. Then we look at what that means in terms of what can be effective teaching methods. And we place some focus on creating and maintaining what is called a positive learning environment, because that's been shown to have such a great impact on how much people learn when they're in a workshop. The instructor training takes place either over 2 full days if it's in person, but much more often it gets taught online, and the online trainings take place over 4 half days. And as I mentioned before, there's this kind of short checkout process that involves a few steps that people need to take after they've attended that 2-day training to complete their certification. Going back to this figure then, no, I think that was a duplicate of the slide that I already presented. Right, I want to talk about why I think it's important to not only take that instructor training, but then after you've taken the instructor training to actually teach workshops as a carpentries instructor. So of course, there's partly the impact that you can have on the people that you're teaching those skills to. But being an instructor is often a lot of fun as well. And it's a great networking opportunity, particularly I think the in-person workshops, but the online workshops are a great way to meet people as well. This is a terrible photo, I think, but it was taken by me at a software carpentry workshop in Berlin in 2017. Holger Dinkel, who is another member of the German RSE community, is doing a great job in this photo of teaching version control with Git. That was 6 years ago already, but I've a lot of really fond memories of the trip, and I just wanted to share it here. If you're interested in taking the instructor training, head to the website at the URL shown in this slide, and you can learn more about what's involved there. I'm going to leave it up. I'm being yelled at from the other room by a 4-year-old, so I'm just going to go see what's going on in there, and I'll be back in just a moment. Thanks for bearing with me. All right, thank you for your patience. 4-year-olds encounter a lot of crises in their life, but the good news is that quite a lot of them are quick to fix, just like that one was. So let's get back to it. Okay, yeah, so please look into the instructor training, become an instructor, ask me questions if you want to about it afterwards as well. So those workshops that I've been talking about, they're a really big part of what the Carpentries does, but the community is active in a bunch of other areas as well. And so I'm not going to have time, or at least I haven't prepared slides to talk about all of them. There's lots. But the one that I'm going to pivot to talk about now is lesson development. So I mentioned earlier, all of our lessons, all of the Carpentries lessons are open source. They're maintained by the community, but there's lots of members of the community who are also building and maintaining lessons of their own that go way beyond the topics that are covered by data carpentry, library carpentry, and software carpentry. And we provide a space for that open source development to take place, which we call the Carpentries Incubator. Lesson development there is supported by the curriculum team, the team that I lead, and also by the wider community. There's kind of mutual support amongst the members of the lesson development community. And we hope, and I think it's true, that the incubator serves as a point of reference for other community members who are not developing their own lessons, but are perhaps interested in finding out what lessons are out there that other community members are working on. They can go to this one place and look through all of the lessons that the community is working on, perhaps because they want to reuse those materials for their own teaching, or they were thinking about developing a lesson on that topic and instead are looking to see if there's something that's already going on that they can start contributing to, and so on. And we hope that, and I think they do. They go there, they find out about it, and they benefit from having easier access to those lessons than they had before the incubator existed, when we knew sort of the members of the community were developing lessons, but we didn't really have a central location where we could go and find out what those lessons were, or get involved. We encourage what we call an iterative approach to lesson development. So lessons get kind of drafted for the first time. And that's what's shown in this figure. We've got the pre-alpha stage, as we call it, which is which is when the first draft of the lesson is really being written. And then lessons move into what we refer to as alpha testing, where they're taught for the first time by the people that have been writing them. And those lesson authors go through these pilot workshops, collecting information and feedback about what's working and what isn't with that lesson design, and then improving on it, iterating on it until at some point it reaches relative stability for them, at which point they start trying to find other members of the community who can take it and teach it and give them feedback about how it's worked for them. And that's what we refer to as this beta testing phase. And each time you kind of go through this process of the lesson being taught, feedback being gathered, and that being used to iterate on the lesson to improve it further and make it more and more usable for other people. To give you an idea of scale, we currently have about 140 lessons that are under development in the Carpentries incubator. Most of those are still in these early stages of development, pre-alpha and alpha. But we're really starting to see some progress beyond into a lot of lessons in the beta phase now, and some heading into something a bit more like stability. Developing a lesson like this takes a lot of work. And even more so when you're doing it in the open for other people to benefit from. So rather than just writing something for yourself, trying to write something that's usable and meaningful for a wider audience to be able to take and teach from as well. We believe that the work that is required there and the time that it takes to do that deserves to be acknowledged. But unfortunately, time spent on lesson development can seldom be represented by traditional research outputs like publications. And of course, that's a similar problem to one that RSEs have been encountering with software development for research as well well, I was going to say recent years, but I suppose it's really a long-term problem. We're trying to address this by creating pathways for the high quality and thoroughly tested lessons that are developed in the incubator to leave that incubator and receive kind of more visibility in the community when they do so. And so there's two ways that this can happen. They can either become new official lessons for one of our lesson programs, or they can pass through a process of open peer review to be accepted into a second space for community-owned lessons that we call the Carpentries Lab. So unlike the incubator, which contains this really large number of lessons in a really wide variety of states, kind of levels of maturity, from the never started in some cases to the long since finished. The Carpentries Lab is a second space for community-owned lessons that was created to provide to the community a collection of community-owned lessons that that they can rely on to be stable, to be thoroughly tested, to be ready to take and to teach and to reuse and adapt and so on. And to further bolster the recognition that those authors receive for their efforts, we're collaborating with the Journal of Open Source Education, HiRSE, to publish lessons that pass through that open peer review process in their journal to receive a kind of a more traditional journal citation and a cross-ref DOI and so on. I wanted to list out a few of the lessons in the incubator that I thought would be particularly interesting to research software engineers. The first one being a lesson on intermediate research software engineering with Python that's really designed to build on top of a standard software carpentry curriculum that teaches really novice level skills in programming and version control and so on. This intermediate curriculum is intended to build on top of that to give people who really want to develop these research software engineering skills an opportunity to do that in a workshop setting. There's a couple of container computing lessons on Docker and Singularity that are the Docker lesson at least is currently going through open peer review in the Carpentries Lab. There's a programming with Julia lesson that's being developed by Simon Christ, who may be in the audience today. I can't see everybody, but is a member of the research software engineers community in Germany. There's lessons on parallel programming and GPU programming, workflow management, packaging and publishing of software in R and Python, a bunch of machine learning and deep learning lessons, and many more. If you want to go and check out the full list of 140 lessons and see which ones might be interesting to you, then you can head to this URL at the bottom of the page and see more there. I also wanted to mention the HPC Carpentry project, which is doing lesson development in the incubator. Oh, hold on a moment. All right, well, I gave you all a little while to read the text on the slide, I guess. But HPC Carpentry is a project that's aiming to, in the Carpentry style, teach foundational concepts and skills for high performance computing. They're developing lessons on several different topics. And as I mentioned, they're doing that in that Carpentries incubator space on GitHub. They're also, as a community, entering into this process that we call lesson program incubation, with the idea that they develop their community structures and their processes and their curriculum and so on, such that they're ready to join the Carpentries as a new official lesson program alongside data carpentry, library carpentry, and software carpentry. They have monthly coordination and co-working meetings that are open for anyone to join. And there's a Slack channel on the Carpentry Slack workspace called HPC Carpentry, or you can head to hpc-carpentry.org to find out more there as well. And so anyone who's here who's interested in teaching HPC or learning HPC skills, I highly recommend checking out that project as well. And I'm looking forward to welcoming them into the Carpentries organization officially sometime soon. So talk a little bit about the support that the Carpentries provides for this lesson development in the community. First of all, to talk about the infrastructure that's provided for lesson websites. So all of our lesson sites, as I mentioned before, they're open source. They're hosted through GitHub pages on GitHub. And the infrastructure that makes that possible, it converts the source files to these lesson websites, is all open source. It's licensed MIT, and it allows people to write their lessons using Markdown or R Markdown, that then gets turned into this this website that's accessible because it's the layout and the styling's been designed to meet at least the double A standard from the WCAG, and includes various automated tests to help lesson developers make sure that the content that they're writing is as accessible as possible for people. And it has a relatively simple setup process for local builds of the lesson sites as well, to help you preview what your lesson looks like before you publish it online. I say relatively because there are still some kind of dependency management involved, but anyone who used the old version of our lesson infrastructure and tried to install that locally will have had a much more painful experience, I think, than they'll have trying to get this one set up to preview their lessons. Yeah, and so the screen grabs on the right-hand side is just to give you an idea of what these sites look like and some of the kind of stylized elements that are within them, in case you haven't seen one of our lessons before. Further support for lesson development includes communications that we enable, so providing listings of the lessons that the community is developing on our website, and also issues where those developers and maintainers of those lessons are looking for help from the wider community. We provide a listing of those on our website as well. We help the community write and publish blog posts about the lesson projects they're working on. We maintain and support a dedicated channel on our Slack workspace for lesson development, and we've got a mailing list to send out announcements and information that we think will be relevant for people doing lesson development in the community as well. We also provide a bunch of resources for reference, I suppose, a lesson developer handbook, documentation for the infrastructure and the processes around lesson development, and various templates for things like taking notes at a pilot workshop on what's working, what isn't working with a new lesson, gathering a template for post-workshop feedback to gather that kind of information from the people who attended those pilot workshops and so on as well. And last but certainly not least, we provide training in lesson development. And this brings me on to the last of the main topics that I wanted to discuss, which is this new program that we call collaborative lesson development training that the Carpentries launched last month at the beginning of October. So this is another training that runs online, where the instructor training lasts 4 half days when taught online. Collaborative lesson development training is spread over 6 half days, but those 6 half days are split into 2 parts. So the first part is 4 half days, the same as an instructor training, but then there's a second part with the remaining 2 half days that comes after an extended break. The training curriculum teaches skills in lesson design and development. I'm being yelled at again. Sorry, just a moment. I hope you're all enjoying these little breaks that I'm giving you. All right, so yes, skills in 3 main areas: good practices for lesson design and lesson development, working with the Carpentries lesson infrastructure, and tools and practices to collaborate effectively on projects like this. And this last point about collaboration is really important, I think. The curriculum, when we were designing it, was really designed with collaborative teams in mind. So teams who really want to work together on developing a new lesson on a particular topic. And so the goal really here is to maximize the value of the training for those groups who want to work together on a lesson, because that really helps people to take full advantage of the open source nature of Carpentries style lesson projects. And I'll mention now that in order to join the training, at least one member of a team of trainees must have attended our instructor training beforehand. So during the training, you'll learn about how to design a lesson, how to draft and test the content for that lesson, and then you'll actually in kind of a bunch of hands-on exercises, you'll go through that process of design and drafting, and then between the 2 parts of the training, there's a sort of homework exercise to go and actually test out some of that content that you've developed during the first part of the training. You'll learn how to build a lesson website as you're going through that as well. And in the second part, when you come back, having tested that material out, you'll learn a lot more about how to plan your collaboration and how to foster collaboration around your project. And so the value to RSEs on this one is really to learn about how to create lessons or tutorials or whatever that will effectively communicate the concepts that you want to communicate and that will teach research software engineering skills to people effectively. We've taught that training a few times already, and the feedback that we've received from trainees when they've attended that has been overwhelmingly positive, I guess. So over 2/3 of the participants in the trainings we've run so far have scored it 9 or 10 out of 10 in terms of likelihood that they would recommend it to a friend or a colleague. And And that includes every participant of the most recent training after we'd had some chances to iterate on the curriculum and improve it based on the feedback and experience that we gained beforehand. And so, yeah, really based on this feedback in particular, we know that this is ready now to be rolled out to a larger audience. And so that's why we've launched it now. And I'm really excited to hear what the trainees make of the full program now that it's been launched. Next. Oh, I suppose I should say, I think sorry, my Zoom stuff is in the way. I'm working on one screen today. Yeah, so you can, if you want to learn more, then head to this URL at the bottom of the slide, and you can read more about the more details really about the training and how it runs. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about membership to the Carpentries now, because this is really how you can start to gain access to a lot of this training and benefit most from involvement in the Carpentries by becoming a member organization. So reasons to become a member organization and to contribute to the Carpentries financially through doing that. But first of all, of course, you'll be supporting our mission to I guess, increase access to high quality training in essential computational skills for research all over the world. You'll gain access to software, library, and data carpentry workshops for your institution. You'll also gain access to the instructor training and potentially to the lesson development training that I just described in the previous slides as well, to improve the quality of teaching that's provided by the people at your own institute, and also provide those research software engineers in your organizations with opportunities for professional development. You can read more about this by going to carpentries.org/membership, and you can go to carpentries.org/members to see a list of the current member organizations that we have. And then finally, a couple of things that I want to shout out that are ways that you can get involved too. We're currently part of a large collaborative project funded by the CVI, working with 2I2C, Open Life Science that I mentioned before, OLS that I mentioned before, Metadescensia, which is an organization teaching skills in how to teach to communities in Latin America, and a bunch of other organizations as well to deliver Jupyter Hub infrastructure, managed Jupyter Hub infrastructure to communities in Africa and Latin America that can make use of them for their research. If you know of any, or if you are a member of any biomedical research communities in Latin America or Africa who could benefit from access to this kind of free and supported managed Jupyter Hub infrastructure, then please get in touch with us. You can tell me, or you can send an email to my colleague Angelique, angelique@carpentries.org. And finally, we're planning, I'm a member of the organizing committee for a Carpentries community event that we've got planned to take place in Heidelberg in November next year, just under a year from now. And so I'm popping this up on a slide to give you a chance to save the date, so to speak, in your calendar, if that's something that you'd be interested in attending. And of course, if you're interested in joining the organizing committee to help us out with it, then I'd be delighted to hear from you. So you could send me an email in that case. That was a lot. Thank you very much for listening. A reminder of my contact details at the bottom of the slide. Thanks for bearing with me through those few interruptions. I will try to stick around for questions, but things are getting increasingly rebellious over here, so we'll see whether I might have to cut things short as I go along. Thanks again.
Thank you for watching our seminar. Please check out the slides on Zenodo linked below, and see you next time.